All right, welcome everybody. We are here for the first career chat with SAS. We are so excited. So my name is Anna Valegia. I am the manager of Alumni Career Services for the NC State Alumni Association. And we have with us Lindsay. So she is the University Outreach Specialist for SAS. So today we're going to be talking about finding your fit and what that means. But before we get started, I want to give you a little bit more information about our resident expert. So Lindsay is a 2005 graduate of NC State.
Go Wolfpack.
She has a degree of business administration with a concentration in human resources. She has vast experience in HR, including time spent as a compensation analyst and various recruitment and general HR roles at several well-respected organizations in various industries, such as utilities, technologies, municipalities, and engineering consulting. So her primary role at SAS is to be the liaison between SAS and universities across the United States, with the goal of attracting top talent to the company. So this involves branding, coordinating events, presenting about the impact SAS makes around the globe and their world-renowned culture. So Lindsay's passion is helping students find their first job and watching their careers go. So the reason why we picked the topic, finding your fit, is because 90,000 hours is the amount of time on average you will spend at work over your lifetime. And that is a lot.
It's a lot.
That is a lot. So that's why we want to make sure to focus on this topic and to figure out what it means to find your fit and what it means to look out for company culture. So we're just going to get right started. So we actually had a question come through on our Facebook Live event. So I'm just going to start there and then we'll kind of move forward. So, all right, Lindsay, I really enjoy working in the community and have a passion for children education. But recently, I had a paid position working in the community. But since it's not related to my field, should I include this position on my resume? And, you know, we hear this a lot. So what would you kind of say?
Yeah, this is definitely a classic question. So should I put this? How far should I go back? You know, your resume should tell a story. And my recommendation, and you'll hear it in many different ways, is that, you know, go back 10 years if you've got a lot of experience. You certainly don't want to put, 20 years worth on your resume, but anything relevant to the position that you're going for. And certainly you may be in a role that, doesn't have the same title or it's a completely different field, but there's always things that you can draw on.
Absolutely.
So regardless of if you think, the position title isn't a fit, just think about what you've been doing during that job, and whether it's customer service, you can use that skill set and kind of brand it to the job that you want to go for.
Absolutely. And we will say, so we can see the comments, so if y'all have questions as we go, we would love to kind of filter those and go through them. So we have some already prepared, but Lindsay is more than willing to kind of answer your questions that you have. So thank you so much. All right, next question. So Lindsay, in your experience, what makes somebody a good fit? Whether that's at SAS or some of your other organizations, what does that really mean? Does that look different at different companies?
Sure. It all comes down, to culture, right? So, usually companies have a handbook. Well, culture and fit, it's so much more than what's written in words. It's a feel that you get, and it's a lot of times, it's knowing what management believes in, what does the company believe in. So, we all have choices of where we want to work, and we can all do our job for any company. So it's important to like what you do, who you do it for, and your team. So finding that culture, it's what the company stands for. So values, a mission statement. All companies have one. SAS has one. And so understanding what that is, because really, if you go into a company and you're doing your job, if you don't believe in the company, it's only going to take you so far. You're going to have a hard time staying, longevity, if you really don't believe in that company culture.
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of going maybe to look at their mission statement or their values, but what are other ways that they can find out about the culture of the company?
Definitely. I think talking to people that, maybe you don't know somebody directly with a company, but reach out to people. We've got tools nowadays like LinkedIn that you can definitely contact somebody and ask to meet up for a coffee and just learn more about that company. You certainly don't want to get yourself into a situation where you join, an organization and then you find out, ooh, this isn't where I want to be. I don't believe in the values or their mission.
Yeah.
So finding as much out about that as you can. And even, let's say you got an interview with a company, you want to meet with as many people as you can from that company. Ask to meet with team, ask to take some people to coffee or have them take you to a coffee, just so you can meet as many people as you'd be working with.
And would you say that has to be the person that's going to be doing the hiring, or should it just be somebody in the company?
I think it could be both. I think it could be your team as well as just anybody. I think getting different perspectives, so maybe somebody that's been there less than a year, somebody that's been there 20 years.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to have a different opinion.
Yep.
And people represent a company no matter how long they've been there.
Yeah, everyone has a different story.
Exactly.
All right. So how does a job seeker know the type of company culture that is a good fit for them? And maybe that means that they don't have a lot of work experience, because you deal with some students too. So if they're a recent graduate, or maybe they're switching industries completely. So how do you know what that means to you? How does the person find what is a good fit for them?
Right. I think it goes back to your morals, your values, your ethics. And every company, whether it's public or private, these are all factors you've got to think about. Do you like working in a very large company with, my company now is awesome, global, 14,000 people? Or do you like more of a company that's smaller? So I think it's finding out things about the company that maybe you have an interest in, and your values. Leadership, understanding, kind of put it this way, is the company, I hate to say micromanager, but do they kind of let you do what you want and you've got flexibility? Or is it more of, okay, I need to be in my seat from 8 to 5, and maybe some people really like structure. So I think it's figuring out those details about a company that you don't want to find out later.
Right. And like what you said, if you're talking to people beforehand, you should be able to start to find that out pretty quickly. Okay, so what are some questions someone should ask in an interview? Because an interview is obviously a great way to get to know someone within the organization. So are there specific questions that candidates can ask during the interview?
Definitely. The interview process is a two-way street. So sure, a company's interviewing you for a job, but you need to make sure that it is a fit for you. And whether it's culture or whether it's the actual job details of what you're going to be doing, it's a time where, you certainly don't need to feel like you have to accept a position, because there are plenty out there. So reverse the stage. Make it to where you're interviewing a company, so to speak. Ask about the culture. Ask people how long they've been there. What do you like most about the company? What do you like least about the company? What are some obstacles that your team faces? So try to understand reality. And that can be hard, but I think if you get at asking enough questions, the truth will come through, in that interview process.
Yeah, definitely. So we did have a question come through from Shirley. So basically she has, wondering if you have any recommendations for someone who maybe just graduated with a PhD, like a higher level, or maybe even a master's degree. So that might put them out of the running for certain positions because they have this degree that maybe they don't have the experience, but they have the education. So what would you say, how do you know, or how do you ask those questions and kind of get in front of the company when you know that the degree is valuable, but maybe, it might overqualify you for something?
I think you expressing that you're willing to start, at an entry level, yes, you've got that advanced degree, which is awesome. So maybe like you're saying, you have the degree, you don't have experience. Well, you need to sell yourself. What are the things that you've learned in school? What projects have you done? PhD, what research have you done? So it's making yourself presentable to that company, and transferable skills, whether you have the experience, whether you don't have the experience. You can flip it either way and show that you've got experience, whether it's classroom or on the job, by talking about what you actually are doing in class.
Yeah. And would you say maybe if they don't see that themselves, is that a good fit for them? What would you say?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not a place you'd like to work. So it's just, realizing that. And there's, I always say, don't make your bucket too small. Go for many roles, read descriptions, meet with people. So I say cast a wide net. And then, reel it in.
That's great advice. So what about when you are evaluating multiple offers? So that's always the best case scenario, when you have multiple offers coming through. But when you're evaluating it, how do you know which one to go with? Because you don't want to make a bad decision at that point.
Right. That's a great question. Many of us have been in this situation. I personally have been in this situation. I think it's taking enough time. Maybe you're done with all the interviews, you get your offers, you know, definitely sleep on it, you know, take enough time. Look through total compensation. And I know we mentioned I was a comp analyst, but it's important to really understand the full facet of the company, what they're going to offer you. Again, meeting as many people as you can. And if you have a question still on the back of your mind, reach out to that hiring manager or the team and making sure, you know, it's a good spot for you. And that's certainly okay to do. You have, you know, I want you to feel like you have the upper hand when you're a candidate going for a role. And so I think it can be hard when you've got multiple offers, but again, that's the best case scenario. And if you've met with enough people, if you've researched the company, if you know the culture, if you know what you're going to be doing on a daily basis, I really think it's going to shine through kind of which route you should take. And then just don't look back. Keep going. You know, certainly thank everybody else that's given you an offer and keep those lines of communication open. But, you know, you'll know when it's the right fit.
And I think this is one question that I get is that maybe you get an offer come in, but you're still in the interview process with other companies. And you know, there's one that's kind of the dream company that's maybe dragging their feet or they just haven't gotten back to you, but you have this other offer that it's there, right? You know it's there, and the other one may or may not be. How do you navigate that situation?
Right, and timing is what's so hard in the recruiting process because you've got some employers that are going to give you a deadline within a week, some a couple days. If you are the right candidate and they're the right company for you, they will rate for the right candidate. So if you needed a week to decide because you have another offer. If you had a great interview, a great relationship with this team and hiring manager, I have no doubt in my mind they would give you the time that you need.
Okay.
So maybe if they're not flexible with you, that may be an indicator of what's to come with the company.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, maybe the best thing that could have happened.
Right.
So what about if you are, I mean, I guess just if you do get an offer come in, what are some of the key things to look for? Like, what do you evaluate to accept an offer? Obviously, culture is a big part of that.
Right.
You know, what does that mean in that situation? And then what else should you consider?
Definitely. You know, when you get that offer letter, and it's going through it line by line and making sure, you know, if you've got offer A or offer B and you're looking at them in comparison, it's definitely looking at that total comp. You know, I deal with a lot of students in the role I'm in now, and, you know, we all think about that base pay, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to look at more than that because total compensation is, you know, your benefits, your work schedule, your health care, 401k, your vacation, you know, time off, sick time, all that goes into compensation. Heaven forbid you had a medical issue and you didn't have good health care, that wipes out that base salary.
Yeah.
So it's just that understanding of there's so much more than base pay. Do you have career growth opportunities? So can you be promoted? Maybe it's a job you don't get to expand or grow in your role. And that's certainly part of what you should look at when deciding.
Yeah. So I meet with a lot of alumni that would love to work for SAS.
Sure.
So what are some recommendations that you would give to them, or, you know, what should they do, I guess, because I really have had a handful of people say like that would be their dream, would be to work for SAS. So just from your personal perspective, since you're doing the one hiring at the organization, what are some things for them to be aware of?
Yeah, and I've been in those shoes. I mean, SAS is certainly a company I've known about for a long time, going to NC State and knowing it's in the backyard, so to speak, and you know, studied in school as great culture. My recommendation is, you know, like I said before, utilizing things like LinkedIn. Reach out to somebody. Ask to meet up for a coffee. Who doesn't love a coffee, right? And learn as much as you can about the company. And I think that's important is, you know, there's so many different roles at SAS, whether it's marketing, HR, analytics, things for statistics, math, you know, horticulture, daycare workers, cafe workers. So it really spans the masses. So it's understanding what is the focal point of the business, but then also what can you contribute to SAS? And it's, you know, looking at our website, we always update with new roles and positions. And if you're a student, we're going to be putting those out now. For alumni, that's on a rolling basis. So every day there are new opportunities. So it's being persistent too.
So we actually had another question come through, and it's just, what are some good strategies for networking? And that's definitely a great question that is kind of very open-ended. We're not really sure what, you know, to do all the time. So what would you say?
First and foremost, I would utilize LinkedIn. I've said that 1,000 times because it really does work. So your connection and your bandwidth is going to grow, right? And so, electronically, you'll see how people are posting, and maybe they're liking certain articles, and you can contribute information to that. Networking, some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. So it's a little harder for some. I would consider myself kind of in that middle, more of an extrovert. So I love to network, talk to people, get up. Phone calls are good, but go get coffee. Whether it's people you're working with now, people in the past, keep those connections, because it's a small world.
Yeah.
You end up running into the same people.
That's true.
And I moved away for a couple years. I ended up coming back, have networked with people I used to work with 10 years ago. So people move. You end up in the same industries, different industries, and you never know when you may need a job.
Yep.
Or you just want something different, and then you've worked with people who have been great. You may want to follow them to their company, or vice versa.
Yeah. And so I guess I get this question too. So if somebody's reaching out to you on LinkedIn, maybe before an interview, or maybe they just see your position at SAS and they're interested in speaking with you, what's best practices for doing that? Because I think some people worry that they might be too aggressive, or they might sound too needy, or don't know how to ask it. So do you have best practices for that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's good. Let's say you're going in for an interview, right? And you want to kind of research. You typically get the panel of people who you're going to interact with. So I think it's totally acceptable, and honestly a good thing, to look at, people's biographies, backgrounds, and really know, where have they gone to school? What have been their roles and progression? And maybe you can pick up something that you have in common. So you can actually bring that up in the interview. Hey, I saw you were in this sorority, or you were a student athlete. I also was, and here's what I know we contribute and I can contribute to the table. So it's finding little links, and I think that helps when you can set yourself apart from somebody else. And I think that's where LinkedIn can help do that.
Gotcha.
Even going into an interview.
Yeah, because I think one thing people fear is that they might spend all this time working on the resume and working on their cover letter. Do people read them?
Yes,
okay,
they do. So I can speak for SAS now. My team, we are small but mighty, and we have about 5 of us. And last year we had 9,000 entry-level applications between internships and our entry-level academy roles. And we split those up, and we looked at every single one, and we actually have a 3-week turnaround time to respond back. So it's not a black hole, especially for SAS. So we do look at them. Spend time on the resume, and then take it a step further and try to reach out too.
So I guess we get curious, because sometimes people say, there might be a black hole. Like, you apply to certain places and it does go through a tracking system.
Right.
So, what are some recommendations just to make the resume universal? And obviously we want to tailor it every time, but, to make it universal to different positions that you might be applying to.
Right. So I think, when you're looking at a job description, you certainly want to tie in how your roles relate to that. If it's totally not relatable, there could be a screen out process, right? And if you don't hit certain years of experience, or let's say this is a very specialized position, they're looking for somebody with a PhD with 15 years of experience, and that's just what they have to have.
Yeah.
So you may not make it in, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't keep trying, because there could be another position where a hiring manager may say, okay, well, I'm willing to accept somebody who has less experience, and we can train them.
Yeah.
So that's not out of the realm of possibilities, but sometimes it does, really depend on the role and what they're hiring for. Maybe they just don't have the capacity to actually train.
Yeah. Yeah, that completely makes sense. And we're open to any more questions if you have those coming through. So, but I guess one thing that I'm really curious about is I try to tell people, with going back to company culture, so that's really what we're talking about, is that you kind of get a feeling.
Yes.
Like a good feeling, a bad feeling. Sometimes it's hard to articulate what that means.
Right.
So do you have any recommendations on how to translate that?
Yeah, so let's think about it in interview terms. So let's say you've got 3 interviews in a week, right? And so you leave, and when you're like, okay, I think I did all right. I think I did good. There's another one, you're like, gosh, I think I bombed that. And the last one, you're like, wow, I love these people. I love the mission. I'm going to love working for this company. All of these great things they were saying. And more than that, they showed me, some project work and really explained it well. You'll leave smiling. You'll be excited about it. You'll feel like you can contribute and have a lot to bring to the table. And at the same time, they're willing to grow you and to teach you things. So I think it is that feeling, and it's, that is something, we talked about. It's not necessarily words. It's that feeling that you get to know that, you know, we said 90,000 hours. You are at work a long, long time.
Long time.
And so you really need to enjoy the people around you and to feel like you can be yourself. I think that's important. I can get a little fun and crazy. You know, at 35, I spend my time with college students. So I can do cartwheels down the hallway and not feel like, you know, my boss is going to fire me, because that's who I am sometimes. So there are some companies where that would be totally forbidden. You know, no, you can't do a handstand in the hallway. No. So I think it's finding people that you mesh well with. So if you're an extrovert, making sure that you feel like you can be yourself. And I think that's the key, is being yourself.
Yeah.
You don't want to be at work all day and then finally leave and feel like, okay, now I can be myself, because that's just miserable.
Yeah. So what about kind of the same thing? So you might have somebody that you really mesh with. But let's say during the interview process, there's one person or maybe even two people that you just don't click with, right? Is that an indication for the entire company, or is that maybe something like, what do you say to that?
No,
you know?
that's from the reverse side. I mean, that's a great point. So when you hire somebody, you want to hire somebody that's a culture fit, because they do represent the company, and they're out there. And if you meet one person that maybe you don't like, they're representative of SAS or whatever company you're with. So I would recommend meeting more than one, because it is an assumption. But you're right. I mean, that's where it's so important to find that fit, even from our end, is because we don't want people out there representative of our company culture that they're not a fit for. Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah. And well, I hear people talking about, you know, they might get through the first round, which may be like a phone screen. For the people who go on site, what recommendations would you give to them?
You know, I think, you know, being prepared. So getting past the phone screen, in my opinion, is the hardest part. Because you don't get that face-to-face contact like we're having now, that, you know, you can't read facial expressions. So I think when you're ready for that next step, it's making sure you've got resumes. It's on good paper. It's, you know, back to basics, right? So you're dressed professionally, no matter what that culture may be for the company. Even if they allow jeans, you dress the part. You look, you know, successful, and you're going for a job that you want. And, you know, it's coming prepared with questions about the company and the job. So it's always thinking about putting your best foot forward. And not only that, remembering that the recruiting process starts from the time you initiate contact with this company all the way till the end, till you follow up, hopefully, with a thank you email or card. So it's just remembering that anything you do throughout that whole process, the emails, making sure you spell check, you know, that's all about detail. So making sure that you really do the process correct from start to finish, because you, in some cases, you have one shot.
And I'm just curious, from your perspective, who all is involved in the interview process? Is it just the person there, or is it maybe the person at the front desk? Like, I always try to, you know, tell people that there are multiple people involved with it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we definitely, you know, because certain people see different sides of people. You're right. You know, if the administrative assistant is at the desk and they walk in late, or maybe they've said something bad about the Uber or taxi cab driver, those are all things that people do share with us. You know, the person that's coordinating the flight or the travel for them to get in. If you've got nasty remarks in the email, that's all something that's going to be shared. So it's making sure, you know, which is good from a company standpoint, because we certainly want to see how a person really acts in real life. But it's just knowing, you know, you're not, I hate to use the word big brother, you're always being watched, but it's part of the process.
And kind of speaking of interviews, we had another questions come through. So what is your advice on how to follow up? You know, hopefully you will. But what would you say would be the best practices for
after
that?
your interview?
After your interview.
You know, I think, you know, we used to say handwritten cards were nice. I'm kind of dating myself. But, you know, following up with an email, usually if you weren't provided the email addresses of the team, it's certainly acceptable to either get them from the interview panel or to ask the one person maybe you had contact with, whoever scheduled the interview, the hiring manager, just ask for everybody else's email address that you met, and you can just simply thank them and talk about why you think you'd be a good fit for the role and point out things. Or if you, on the flip side, if you even have questions that you need answered, you can certainly ask those of people. So yeah, definitely don't hesitate following up.
Yeah. Do you send individual emails with each person that you interviewed, or is it okay to send kind of just one and copy everybody on it?
That's a great question. I think either one is fine. Just make sure if it is a template, it doesn't look like a template, because I have seen that quite a bit.
Have different fonts going on.
Different fonts, and it's like, wow, okay, we probably should have screened that in and read that before they sent it. So I think either one is fine, as long as, grammatically and it all makes sense, and some words aren't bold, and some, just making sure it's formatted correctly.
Absolutely. So I guess with that too, is there a way for somebody in the follow-up to make a better impression? So is it maybe a handwritten, or is the email the best way? Do they, should they send it like within 1 minute of the interview?
Right.
Should it come within 48 hours? Just
Right,
the best
yeah.
practices.
We used to say, and now we call it snail mail. So I certainly think email is more acceptable, because sometimes offers need to go out quickly and decisions need to be made. So I certainly think email is more appropriate in this day and age. It's certainly great to do both.
Yeah.
But I certainly, if you're going to leave out one, I would leave out snail mail, because it is slow. So email will get there faster.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend within 24 hours, if not a lot sooner than that, just because you want people to know that you're still interested, and you've got to fight for the position. There are a lot of people going up against you, and so you want to make sure that company has your name in the back of their mind, or in the front of their mind.
Absolutely. So we had another question come through. So when serving as a hiring manager, and someone is in the pool and not already for the position are you hiring for, how do you navigate that? So let me rephrase. So in your role, how do you know someone, if you know somebody is in the applicant pool, right? So what do you do? Like, do you guarantee them an interview? Hopefully I understood that correctly.
Okay.
How do you navigate knowing somebody and then your personal connection during the interview?
Well, a lot of time I'll relate it back to my role now. There's 5 of us on the team. We kind of divide and conquer. So a lot of times, if you were to know somebody, you wouldn't even know. There's a lot of times I never even look at a name. Yeah. Because you want to go off of job skills. Name doesn't matter. Location doesn't matter. Yeah. If somebody's willing to move, maybe there's no reload, but things like that don't matter. So I even, will block out a name and try not to focus on a name. And there's so many people with the same names, you probably don't notice anyways.
What about if you get, this kind of leads me to another question, if you get a name given to you, right, by maybe
referral,
a higher up, even, and they said, hey, I really want you to look at this candidate. I mean, do you treat them differently?
No, we try to treat every candidate the same. Certainly there are certain circumstances where you may throw somebody in a pool for whatever reason, but your candidate pool should be very wide. You've got to interview and look at more than 3 people. And maybe if there are only 3 applicants, well then, you look at what you have. But you should always cast your net wide enough to making sure that you're getting a diverse candidate pool. That's people that may work in the company, that's people outside of the company, that's referrals included. So that's the key, is a diverse, large candidate pool.
Very good. Very good. So another question we have, how can you receive sincere feedback after an interview?
Okay, so if the company's not giving you anything, still, if it's been a little while, it's key to remember time flies for the person that's interviewing, or for the company, and then for you interviewing, it's a little slower. So for me, a lot of times right now, especially, I'm on a plane, I'm traveling, I'm going to universities. So there's a little bit of delay or lag time sometimes in getting back to a candidate. Unfortunately, not intentionally, but just because of scheduling. So it is totally acceptable to follow up in an email in a nice, polite way. Hey, I just wanted to check in, see if there's anything else that I could provide to you. If there are any questions that you still have about my background or my interview, I'd be happy to share any information. And you could just ask them, are there any updates to the timeline that maybe you have another pressing deadline? And as a recruiter, I always say, keep me informed of offers that you're getting or deadlines that you're having, because we may be having 2 more interviews that have been scheduled, but maybe they got delayed due to a hiring manager being sick. So you just never know the flip side of it. So I always say never jump to conclusions or assumptions. Yeah. Because it's just a lot especially if you're interviewing with sometimes 6 to 7 people. Some of those folks have really hectic schedules, and it's hard to pin them all down.
So, and I guess too, even after the fact, so let's say you've gone through the interview process, what about, is it okay to ask how it went, right? So let's say you were turned down, like you got the email that you unfortunately did not get it after the interview. Is it okay for the candidate to ask why?
Yes, definitely. And I do get that. And
Okay.
I think it's good to ask for feedback because, you know, turnover happens. People get promoted. Maybe it is a job that you really want, and maybe you were runner-up, and maybe there was just one thing you were missing. So you can fine-tune that skill set by the time another position becomes available with that team. So I think it's more than fine to ask, you know, what was there a key skill set I'm missing, or, you know, do I need more experience in this?
Right.
So definitely.
Okay. Perfect. So we had another question. So what's the most common interview mistake that job applicants make?
Ooh, the most common. I think sometimes lack of being prepared, right? So
Right.
I think as kind of we mentioned going through the whole recruiting process, you show up late. If you show up late, you've already you've got to dig out of a hole. And there are extenuating circumstances, certainly traffic accidents, but that's why I say get there 30 minutes early, sit in your car, get there an hour early if you have to. Plan on the unexpected.
Call.
Right.
Maybe.
Call.
If you're going to be late.
Yeah, there are always options. So, you know, showing up late, I mean, we see that, and it's unfortunate. And then making sure, you know a company's going to have your resume, but again, having that with you.
Yeah.
So those are all things, and dressing for success. So a lot of those it's not written on the paper, your resume. So this is all things that, you know, you represent a company.
Yeah.
So it's about being professional and polite. You know, asking, sometimes people get scared for an interview, and that's okay. But making sure that, you know, relax, be yourself, let yourself shine through. So then it is an authentic process.
Yeah. How do they show that they've prepared? You know, because I've seen some people, they go through extensive amounts of preparation. And how do they kind of work that in?
Right. There may be some companies, I know if you're going for an analytical type role, you may have to present on a topic. And a lot of times now there are components of the interview where you're going to meet with a panel and just talk about yourself, but there may be a whole nother 30 minutes where you've got to present on a project, or you've got to talk about things and use a whiteboard. So that's going to shine through there. Yeah. But then being prepared with what is the company's mission? What does the company actually stand for? So you'd be surprised. People come in and have really no idea, you know, of the company they're going into. Because if you think about it, you've got HR everywhere. You've got accounting most places. So they can lie in different industries, but know a little bit about it. Maybe ask the company, where are you guys going in 5 years? Where do you see leadership taking the company? So show an invested interest. And getting that knowledge, whether it's off of the computer, calling somebody that's been at the company for a while, but you can find so much now, you know, off of the internet, and the companies share a lot of information.
Yeah. And this could kind of go hand in hand, but you said you get a lot of candidates. So what can make somebody stand out, whether that's on the resume, in person, at a career fair, networking event? What are some ways that people can be more memorable?
All of the above. So I always tell people, you know, the resume, when we see it the first time, make it legible, make it pretty, so to speak. Make it to where, you know, I'm not having to strain my eyes for it, because by the time you get to number 15, if it's got the pretty format and something stands out, something pops. So, and I'll use, now, you know, we look for, it's not just what your GPA was, or, you know, maybe it's been a while and you don't even have it listed, and it's, you know, what are the positions you've had? What volunteer work do you do? What leadership skills do you have? So being able to segment those all out on a resume, where it's not just bleeding words, it's nice bullets, and you know, you always want to say, what did you contribute? So not just a bullet of, you know, I did this, but how did you do that? So explain a little bit more, and then take it a step further. So you submit that to a company. Find an email address of a company or somebody that works there in HR. You know, you may not know the hiring manager, but you can certainly find out a lot by Googling. So you'd be surprised that you can, you know, what you can get. So take a step further, reach out, you know, mail a copy of your resume if you have to. But I think it is making that initial contact, that step further. That's going to help.
Yeah, because it just shows interest.
Right.
Absolutely. So I think we're going to go to our final question.
All right.
Okay, so what is one piece of advice that you would give somebody looking for a new opportunity and trying to find a company culture that's a good fit for them?
Right. I think, okay, let's say whether you have a job now or you don't, you're just looking for a change. I think maybe you know people who have the job or career you want. I think researching the company, going after it, that piece of advice, I'd say be persistent. I knew for a while, I mentioned I had some offers at the same time. I knew I wanted SaaS, but I wanted to make sure it was a fit for me, so
Right.
I made sure I asked enough questions. So I think be inquisitive, be curious, make sure it's a fit. And the only way you're going to do that is, meeting with people. And it all comes back to that culture, how you're going to find out. Networking, research, and be persistent. If you don't get it the first time, try again.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Lindsay. It was an amazing amount of great information, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thanks so much.